So welcome to another episode of SaaS Showdown. This is episode 5 of season 2. I am Colin McCarthy and I'm joined by Kat and
Rose Layton. You know, Colin, we've been
Rose
recording,
Layton.
this
Yeah.
is what, episode 14 total?
40, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think we've ever had a proper showdown. Do you?
No, we haven't. We haven't really had a heated argument. You take one side, I take another.
Is it
Do you
time?
think it's right that we should? Is it time for a proper showdown? Cue the music. Oh, yeah. No, I don't think we have any. All right, let's pick a topic and pick a side. And obviously there are many different topics we can pick, but as this is SaaS Showdown, let's pick a SaaS one. So, software as a service. Let's do completely owned and managed by the IT department, as opposed to managed by the teams that want to use those applications, whether they're marketing, development, finance, talent, HR, recruitment. So,
Okay.
which ones would you like to discuss for?
Well, I think I can see the pros and cons to both sides, but I am going to talk for IT owned today.
So the IT department being in charge
Everything.
of everything, all of the SaaS apps, which in some studies say there could be
Hundreds.
anywhere between 80 and 120 SaaS applications in use across the org. So in your hypothetical, theoretical business, you have the IT team size and experience to do all of that.
I mean, I can't say that I've necessarily had the IT team's size and experience to do all of that. I have lived in a co-owned environment. But mostly I think what makes me want to argue for IT ownership of all SaaS is that there's some very basic principles, a lot of which we spent time talking about managing SaaS that translate really well to each other, right? Some of the security practices and user lifecycle management are firmly in the realm of IT and firmly within the things that we care about for the whole organization. And to me, it doesn't necessarily make sense for an application that's used by a portion or even a large majority of the organization to be managed outside of IT, because those people don't have the same experience. They don't have the same background, and they're not trying to meet the needs that IT is already meeting in some cases.
Yes, that could be true, but shouldn't those departments, if they want to use a tool like Greenhouse, Bamboo, Concur, SAP, any of the other applications, Monday, no, not Monday, what's the one? Namely, I said Bamboo, Greenhouse. Yeah, shouldn't those teams have the skills within those departments to correctly manage, secure, and administer those applications? Because obviously each one of these applications, and even like the marketing tools, MailChimp, Marketo, or the others, they're very specific, and you need a certain knowledge and a lot of knowledge to correctly manage and administer them, and even the end user parts of that. Is that all possible in one IT department? Can one IT department be a jack of all trades, master of all as well? Or can they, in my preferred way, work in partnership with those teams and allow them to do their daily administration, and then work with us on the security and the deprovisioning and the access and the single sign-on? I think it's very much there's space for partnership as opposed to dictatorship,
I don't
which seems to
know.
be
So like I think I've seen plenty of times where support systems, HR systems, finance systems, marketing systems, they end up with basically small teams of administrators within their own org. And it never really made sense to me that if you are feeling like you need teams of administrators within your department, those administrators are functionally IT people. They're providing support to your users, the same set of users. And actually, I've seen lots of business reorganizations that either will spin out those people from IT teams, but I've also seen reorgs that will bring them closer because they realize at a certain point these two groups of people are so misaligned that they need to reorg them back together.
I don't know. I think it's very specialist, some of those
I
applications.
agree.
Like,
I'm not saying that
I don't want
the help desk should manage Salesforce administration. I'm just saying maybe these Salesforce administrators should be part of IT.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I am comfortable, and I like not obviously being aware of, working with, putting security practices in place, making sure that those applications that are purchased by XYZ team are correctly vetted. They're
Right.
the onboarding process for them as a vendor is done correctly. I don't think we need to be managing all of it. I just don't think I think there's too much maybe feature creep or support creep that an IT department can get, because then where do bridge the line between getting that specialist knowledge? Because yes, there's a lot of talent HR specific functions of using something like Bamboo on Namely. I don't think it's purely an IT role.
So I guess other than administrative,
what that application is going to need.
Go ahead.
Sorry, carry on then. I was going to say what those applications provide and what for those users is the HR team, which is different to end users who might be interacting with that application. There's a lot of reporting and other compliance stuff that we as an IT department don't need to know or don't have the bandwidth to know.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. Other than administrative overhead, do you think there are any benefits to the co-ownership model?
I think it spreads the ownership of all of those platforms amongst the teams that rely on them the most. Mm-hmm. The talent, the finance department, and also in a lot of those applications, it means that the correct people have the right access. Something like finance.
Right.
I just need to know that the SAP service is secure and it's running and operational, and people, when they leave, their accounts are deactivated. Do I need to have access to any of the financial information inside it or the reporting and manage those privileges? No, that needs to be controlled and specific to the finance team that are able to do that. Right. The same with HR. An HR platform, the only people who should have administrative access to the HR platform or talent platform are members of the HR team. General IT staff should not be able to go into your Namely directory and, because they've got admin rights on that application and randomly scroll through to look at everybody's personal details.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that.
That's where the fully IT owned model doesn't work.
And I think although I would not say, it's bad practice to let your entire IT team have admin access to everything, super admin access to everything. That's not a good practice either. Maybe when you had 3 people, that was fine, but I've been on teams of 12 that, we were already starting to stratify out that access, because 12 people with their hands in the pot is still too many people.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're missing probably a pretty crucial argument for your side, which is that in the co-ownership model, the needs of the specific department who's using a particular tool, they're able to move more quickly.
Yeah, because they're dedicated. They're focused on it.
Yeah, and they can keep their ear to the ground on new features, big changes, things like that, and address those as they come up. Whereas the IT team, if they're covering all of the SaaS tools, is going to have a lot more noise in that area, and is going to have to prioritize some changes over others.
Yeah, I think with a fully IT owned, you would need a lot of PMs or senior people to manage just the relationship with those applications, the product launches, the testing, all of the support issues that might come from.
Another pro from my side, though, is that change management becomes, I think, a lot more straightforward. You're not wondering what everybody else is doing. You're not wondering what other changes might be taking place. You know what they are because they're all part of the same department.
Yes, yeah, but that can be solved by, monthly, quarterly check-ins with those other teams, a company-wide SaaS application email thread, check-in, saying, hey, talent, hey, finance, what changes do you have coming to your application? What's new? What do we need to know about? Has your vendor done anything? Has your vendor, had a security incident, etc.?
Right.
I think it can be done with communication and collaboration. And I think probably in one of our discussions in season 1, we talked about how, talent and finance and recruitment and the HR team, talent HR, sort of being interchangeable words now, need to be, good friends with IT, and they need to be working together.
Right.
And,
yeah, I think in an organization where those relationships maybe aren't as strong, it becomes a lot more attractive for IT to own everything. Because if you want to do, let's say, an SSO initiative, right, and roll out an SSO for all of your applications, well, you need access to all of those applications. And I've been in places and heard stories from other people about situations where, you couldn't automate with Better Cloud anything to do with Okta because the identity and access management team didn't want the people who were administering Better Cloud to have access to Okta.
I am familiar with scenarios.
Right. And like similarly, I've been in places where the HR systems are not able to be used as a source of truth because the relationship between HR and IT isn't strong.
Right. So in my professional life, we have just gone through. In fact, we did it last year when Google certificates. If you're using Google as your IDP and you're using that to SSO into applications, those certificates only last like 5 years.
Right.
And at some point, you're going to have to renew them, and that involves going around to every single application and just uploading the new certificate. It's a few minutes worth of work if you have access to both platforms. I manage Dropbox. I needed to update the certificate in Dropbox. I downloaded it from our Google
and you uploaded
panel, put it into Dropbox, tested it. 5 minutes worth of work, absolutely easy. For all of the applications that I wasn't an admin on, and even the co-owner department didn't have full rights on their application and needed the vendor to help them do the SSO change, took weeks.
Right.
So that I can see.
So in that sense, it does slow down some things. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But that is one instance where me having admin rights over everything would have made, I had to change 10 application the certificates on 10 applications. It would, if I could have done it in an hour.
Right.
It took like 6 weeks to get all of those, other companies to work with us.
One other point I want to make here is that, like, a lot of what we're talking about, these are the limitations with the existing applications. One way to fix this is for these applications, especially ones that are targeted at non-IT employees, right? They're targeted at finance, they're targeted at HR, they're targeted at marketing. Mm-hmm. One way to fix this would be for those companies to really invest in scoping out a role that is meant for IT, in the same way that we scope out roles that are meant for facilities, meant for HR, right? Like we scope out security roles. That's a really common one all the time. And so, but the trade-off is that it doesn't go both ways, right? Their applications that are meant for them and that we would like them to self-manage because they're the experts, we can't manage the parts that we need to manage without being super admins.
Right.
And ideally, there would be a role that would let us be the ones that manage SSO, because the marketing guy doesn't need to manage SSO.
No. Right. So when you're talking about role, here we go. My brain got slightly confused. When you were talking about role, I thought you meant like a role as in a job position.
No, like an admin
role. You're talking about permissions.
Yeah.
So delegated permissions, application permissions for only being able to access SSO. Yeah, this comes down to a good granular application development with admins and administrations in mind.
Right.
And and a lot of these companies don't think of that, and obviously
it seems like a fairly simple one. Like in some applications there's only one or maybe two things that admins need, or like IT admins would need to be able to do, which is like provision and deprovision users and manage the SSO. That's it.
Yeah.
One role, two permissions, essentially.
Sounds easy, but I'm pretty sure I can only imagine however that application has been built, and it's, permission systems, those two parts of the application aren't built in a way that it's easy to give people the correct admin rights to them.
I mean, but to me they should be, right? Even if and I guess, like, in terms of thinking in permissions, like, obviously the ideal permission version, like when you're structuring your permissions within an application, would be to have each permission sort of stand on its own, because then you can mix and match them as much as you want.
Yeah, but that's going to be very...
And then you can prepackage them into, like role sets.
Oh, predefined roles. Yeah.
But I think ultimately,
otherwise that would be incredibly granular.
You do want everything to kind of sort of stand on its own. Every major action that you could take. Yeah. Is that showdowny enough?
Yeah.
This is hard because I actually, for what it's worth to the audience, I don't believe in IT ownership of everything. I think it's wildly impractical. I instead believe in developing relationships with people.
Yes. And I think it's widely, and obviously this is a good point, because if somebody else is thinking of this, they can hear these discussions and viewpoints, and you can see we were both able to argue pros and cons for each, even though we initially took a more firmer stance on one model than the other. But it does show that there are a lot of limitations on IT only. And I think the other problem with having IT only, it really does foster a them and us. If IT come in and take over everything, then they're stopping us from doing this. We can't change this in the application because they don't have the time to do it, or the person who's done it is off.
Yeah.
Um,
It
but the
affects,
person their person who manages it could be off as
right.
well. But then it's on them to manage their own
Well,
resources.
and so the thing is I think there are the problems that you can solve with the IT ownership model can be solved in other ways. So one of them is sort of this idea about who supports what, right? Your help desk
Mm-hmm.
team has a limited capacity. You're adding more work to your help desk team by trying to absorb all the applications because they have plenty of other very IT related things to keep in their heads. And knowing the ins and outs of Figma or whatever tool you want to be using um, is not practical. um, so I think on a certain level, like going with the IT model, ownership model, you're putting strain on your help desk. I have seen that go the other way, in which the help desk is doing a really excellent job and has really good response times, and whatever team is supporting the other applications is not putting up the same SLA, right? Like, and
Right. Yeah.
so that becomes a problem because then people are going to try to go to IT, even though IT can't support them, right? Because they don't have access or whatever. So I have seen that
Right.
kind of
Or
go both ways. One way to fix that,
yeah.
obviously, is to align on support outcomes for all of the teams that
Would you
support
even?
users.
So this is so my analytical man brain has gone to trying to fix the problem because you've just semi-described the
Right.
problem. So in this case, I would think and suggest that those other application administrators need to be part of your ticketing system. So they need to
Yes.
have a queue in Freshservice or ServiceNow or whatever
And
you're
that's
using.
one way to
Please don't let it
accomplish
be
it. I have
Jira.
seen it where they share the same ticketing system. They just literally don't use the same SLA. Like one is
Right,
like, we're going to
right.
respond within an hour. And the other is like, we're going to respond within 2 days. And I'm like, what are you doing with your time?
I don't know. In the incredibly large corporate world, 2 days is not too bad. I thought
I
you were
just
going to
think
say,
like IT is
it all
held to
comes
a
down
much
to the
different
scale of the
standard, I think,
business.
because if your computer breaks and you can't use it, 2 days is a really long time to get a
Yes,
first response.
I know, but if you can't log into the HRIS system to book your holiday, is that a P1 issue? Yes, it's a P1 issue to
Well,
you,
yeah. And if your
but
computer
you can
breaks,
still
that's a
do
P1
everything
issue to
else that you
you.
need to do.
How hard is it to fix, really?
Right. I know, but if your computer is broken, that's a genuine problem because you cannot do anything. But if you cannot get in to Bamboo or namely to book your
Right.
vacation, it's I think that has the 2+ day SLA.
Yeah.
Because that would might have to go out to the team, the co-ownership
Mhm.
team who manage that
To be fair,
application.
yeah, the
So
scenario I'm
that's
talking about is not HR. It's like a support
right.
systems team. But yeah, so the other sort of issue that I've seen that I, like brought up with the IT ownership model is
Mm-hmm.
like one reason to have it is so that you can manage the SSO for all of the applications in your organization, right? Because there aren't role-based
Yeah.
access. There aren't. And that one I think is often solved by sometimes by just trying to get everybody on the same page about what the value of SSO is. Because I have seen it in a lot of
Who is not on that
Oh
page?
my gosh. I've seen it. I've seen organizations where everything's on SSO besides the HR tool and everybody's just mad about it. I've seen it where it's the finance team that doesn't want to do SSO for their product, or they're using something that's like on-prem that doesn't work with the SSO. Like,
Right.
I've seen it a lot of different ways. And I think getting everybody on the same page about SSO is one way to address that. The other potential way to do that is SSO is often a security and compliance requirement. So
Yep.
sometimes you just need a little leverage from security and legal to get everybody on
Yeah.
that page. They don't have to understand it. They just have to comply.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So,
as you noted, sometimes, uh, you know, you have to do a little bit of advanced planning if you're using a certificate-based SSO system where you have to renew the certificates every 5 years and they're all sort of coming up at once. You need to plan that maybe like a couple of months in advance rather than trying to get it all done in 1 month. Because you might have one of those scenarios where they have to contact the vendor.
We did. Yeah, we did it 6 months in advance. I think by the time we finished, some of the applications, we had sort of 3 months left, and it's like, should we leave it to the last minute, or should we do it in advance? It's like we're losing 6 months. And it's like, well, we've still got 4 years. I'm sure we'll have moved to something else since at that point. So yeah. Don't leave it to the last minute.
Don't. Well, and that's the same is true about the relationship building aspect. You can't just like come up with these things that you want and present them to someone and expect them to comply. Like it's a long game to build the relationships.
Yes, yeah, and it's something that takes constant work. It's not a one meeting, one email, done and it's fixed. It's a ongoing collaboration, checking in. Certainly if the security department and the IT department need to know beforehand. I've been in situations where somebody has said, they've emailed and said, we need you to create some DNS records because we've got to validate a new service that starts. And I'm like, first we're hearing about it, we've got to do a whole bunch of security checks before you can start using this application.
Right. Yeah. And I think
we're not going to be doing it.
That would be my final thing about the IT ownership model. The other piece about IT being involved is that we're also involved in the acquisition of new products. And I do think IT should be involved. I don't think IT always needs to own it though. My only caveat with that is that I also personally, there's a reason I published a blog post and an ebook about how to like choose the right SaaS app, because I saw so many bad decisions made by people who were trying to select for their own department, right, in that co-ownership model, but they just weren't using anywhere close to the right criteria. And so they would get all the way sort of to the end and be like, well, we want to get this thing. And then IT would go, well, that thing doesn't have SSO. They don't have any of the compliance requirements that we have. Like, I'm not even sure what need you're trying to fill with this. Like, why do you need this thing when we already have X, Y, and Z, And so that one I think is a harder problem to fix because you have multiple groups coming to the table with different requirements. Right. But I think part of the co-ownership model is deciding who's going to support something. And so sometimes the answer may be that IT won't support it. Your team, whatever department or whatever team you're on, has to be willing to support people's issues with that thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So go make friends with your HR talent director,
your finance person, your marketing people. Director, for God's sakes, make friends with your marketing people.
Your recruitment people, your developers. Find the heads of every department and ask them what they're doing, what tools do they have that they've taken on board that we don't know about, we as IT don't know about. And what new tools that they're thinking about getting, and making sure that they speak to you,
is there anything that's like not making them happy with the tools that they have now? Like maybe those 6 extra logins for the tools that they've never mentioned are really grating on them, and you can help them out with that.
Yeah, could just be a little adjustment of the SSO timeout. can make life so much more simpler and just as secure. So, Rose, it seems like for our first SaaS showdown, we've come to a SaaS compromise,
I think we
a
have.
SaaS agreement.
We can't disagree on
That's where
anything,
we are.
Colin. It's us versus the SaaS, I think. That's the real showdown.
maybe SaaS is always the answer. So, well, it's been great. It's been great chatting with you again for another 30 minutes of the SaaS Showdown. Yep. Until next time.
See ya.
Cheerio.
Produced by the tabGeeks Network. Enjoy all of our shows on YouTube at youtube.com/tabgeeks. Join our exclusive, free, no sponsors allowed Slack community and sign up for our newsletter at tabgeeks.com.